r/ProRevenge. Posted by user, deleted. You slept with my girlfriend? Better watch your back. TLDR at bottom. Full disclosure, this isn't my story. It happened to a friend of mine who lived in the USA a long time ago, so the dialogue isn't exact. He gave me permission to post it on Reddit. For ease of writing, I'll write it as if it happened to me. Due to the nature of the story, some details have been changed. Cast: me, friend. Karen, me's GF, had a drug addiction but was clean for 2 years, important for later. Jill, business owner. Jake, old friend, asshole of the story. I live with my GF Karen, and my old grade school friend Jake, who was working as a sales rep. We live on the outskirts of a well-known city in the States. When I was in my late 20s, I found myself looking for work, as the bar I was working at closed down. Knowing I was desperate for work, Jake calls me, and tells me his new GF Jill just purchased a motel/bar with a small kitchen and she is after hired help. Needless to say, I jump at the opportunity as Karen wasn't working, the bills were piling up and our health insurance was due. I called Jill, arranged to meet her at her new property, to introduce myself. Jake made the introductions in person, and had already told Jill that I was a hands-on DIY person, with hospitality experience. Now to explain, my dad is a Sparky and believes if you can pay someone to fix something, you could probably do it cheaper yourself. He taught me lots and still does to this day. After a 30-minute chat, Jill tested me with a few odd jobs like rewiring an outlet, fixing a clogged sink, and quizzed me on liquor laws. Needless to say, I was hired that day. Originally, work was all about getting the property ready for business. Jill thought it would have been minor works, paint, replacement of fixings and furniture. We soon found out the electrical wires were shot, the whole place needed rewiring, which was a cause of stress for Jill as it would have blown her budget. Lucky for Jill, my dad was between contracts, and offered his services using leftover stock, already paid for from other jobs. Jill would need to cover the cost of any new product required. As for labor, his payment, he said he enjoys a steak and beer on Friday nights. After 3 weeks of helping Dad, the wiring was done, was up to code and at a fraction of the cost. Jill and I spent 1 to 2 months painting all 15 motel rooms, bistro, bar, cleaning the kitchen, cool rooms, etc. Jake would offer to help but always left after 20 minutes saying he has to make a sale. Jill often worked well into the night. After all, this was her dream. I'd take some furniture home to restore after hours, and return it once restored. The business opened up after 6 months, and thanks to Dad, opened under budget. Jill managed the business and ran the kitchen. I worked where I was needed. In the kitchen, on the bar, tending to maintenance. I was on salary, second in charge, and could work in any position. Things went smoothly for a year. The business was turning a profit. Dad was getting his weekly beer and steak. Karen seemed happy. Jake was still working as a sales rep for a pharmaceutical company. One day I felt crook at work, so I clocked off and went home early. Pulling into my driveway, with the exception of a turning gut, things felt normal. Jake's car was there, but he lived there, so I didn't think anything was wrong. As usual, I parked behind Jake, important for later. When I opened the door, I found Karen doing the reverse cowgirl with Jake on the couch. After seeing me, Jake grabbed his pants, and ran out through the back door. Karen and I argued into the night. She tried blaming me, saying I'm never home, I'm spending too much time with Jill. We were keeping things professional, I was her employee. I went to bed and told her she can sleep in Jake's bed, as she clearly finds it more comfortable. I called Jill and informed her of this, as Jake was her boyfriend. She was upset as he cheated on her but admitted she suspected he was seeing someone else. Jill offered me a room at the motel until I figure out my next move. The next day I loaded my personal effects in the truck. Jake's car was still there as I had blocked it in. I told Karen she can keep the rental and the furniture. I said to Karen, I'd be back for my tools in a few hours, and I would appreciate it if she wasn't there. I went home that afternoon to load my tools into my truck. While I was grabbing something from under my workbench, I found a bag I wasn't familiar with. Upon closer inspection, I found a large number of little tablets. The way they were packed and hidden made me realize they were probably not legal. A thorough search of the house led to me finding 2 more bags and about $12,000 in cash. I put 2 and 2 together and realized that Jake's pharmaceutical sales job was code for drug dealer, and Jake probably traded pills to Karen for intimacy. I was beyond angry until I realized that I have all I need to get him back. The revenge. Jake's car still hadn't moved. I went inside and grabbed his spare keys, checked on a pair of gloves that were in the garage. I put half the money and 1 bag of stuff in his boot, and thought, hang on, this won't pass. I removed his spare tire from the wheel well and put the bag in there. The other 2 bags, I threw them down the storm drain in the laneway behind my house. As for the $6,000 cash, Jake did cost me a house full of furniture. Just saying. I sent a message to both Jake and Karen with a typical hurt script. I can't believe you did this, we were friends blah blah blah. I've left, I hope you two are happy together. I then made an anonymous tip to the local police and ATF, about a man fitting Jake's description, loading what looks like stuff, into the boot, of a car that sounded like Jake's car, and provided a partial number plate number that matched Jake's car. It didn't take long for law enforcement to find the car, and locate the stuff. What I wasn't counting on is Karen was driving the car at the time. She was later released when they found out she was driving the wrong car at the wrong time. A warrant went out for Jake's arrest. The icing on the cake. I found out later that not only was the police after Jake, but his supplier was also, as well as he lost a lot of product. Fast forward 3 months, I purchased a house. I was still working with Jill. Karen was pregnant with Jake's baby and he was on the run. I suspected she was keeping contact with Jake, because she suddenly left the district when she was 8 months pregnant. 12 months after the incident, after a drunken night, Jill and I mixed business with pleasure and started dating. That was 10 years ago. We are married, have 2 children and just opened our 3rd business. Dad still gets his weekly steak and beer. I did hear a rumor that Jake and Karen wound up in Alaska but can't confirm this. I do feel a little bad about it now because Jake made it possible for me to date Jill and live a wonderful life. I do hope he is well. TLDR, best friend sleeps with my girlfriend friend, he now has police and drug gangs chasing him. Edit, my friend clarified why his dad did such a good deal for the electrical work. Apparently, he had a large contract cancelled due to bankruptcy, after the contract paid a sizable non-refundable deposit, which he uses for supplies. Basically, he had the materials already on hand and a few weeks suddenly free up. A++ gentleman. Posted by user, the bad guy below. Selectively enforce the rules? Okay, let's follow them to the letter now. I used to work for a manufacturing company that makes waste containers, dumpsters and such, and at first, it was a good job with a good manager and no problems. I enjoyed the work. It was a dirty, physically demanding job but kept me in good shape. I could just put in my earbuds and cruise through the day without any issues. My initial job was to prep the units for painting, by polishing imperfections with a sander, and grinding down the areas that were too rough, as well as cleaning them up after the welders were done with them, but after a while, they kept laying off so many people, and dumping their jobs on me, that eventually towards the end of my time there I was quality control, helped the painter, was a warehouseman, finisher, grinder and also janitor, for no additional pay beyond the small cost of living raises we got once in a while. After about a year of working for this company, before having all these jobs dumped on me, without any issues, new management showed up, and as they like to do, they started making all kinds of changes just for the sake of making changes, things that made jobs harder with no benefit, cutting corners that should not be cut, and generally hurting productivity and workplace safety. The change in management was bad, but it was not the end of the world. It made things harder for no real reason, but all in all, things were still manageable, until I ended up off work for about a month, with a collapsed lung, that I still to this day believe was caused by working conditions there and lack of ventilation and PPE. When I came back to work, I was on light duty for quite some time, since I had surgery to repair the lung and prevent it from collapsing again. I went from the golden boy who they called on when the shit had to get done, to the red-headed stepchild of the company, and management was doing everything they could to get me to quit. They would throw my tools away, hide my stools, so I couldn't use them while I was working, hassle me over things like my earbud sighting, safety as to why I couldn't use them, even though OSHA themselves told me it was not an issue. The production manager would lie about things and write me up for non-existent violations, refuse to fix my bay doors that had been crashed into by forklifts numerous times, that had to be closed and opened with a crowbar by 2 people since the track was mangled. Other things include the company giving everybody in the plant raises except for me, catching me 5 minutes before leaving work to go on my weekend, and informing me that we had to work the next day and selectively enforcing safety rules, and even making rules up on the fly. After about 6 months, I had had enough, and decided that if they want to constantly cite policy and safety rules to fuck with me, then I could play that game too. I would make this manufacturing plant the safest company on the planet, and ensure the policy was followed to the exact letter. This was now my mission. I began to slow my work way down, and only do the jobs I was hired and paid to do. Instead of doing the workload of 10 employees with nothing in return, they now got exactly 1 person's worth of labor out of me. Customers' orders began stacking up, deliveries were late, bad welds and welds that got missed during production, were overlooked, causing the units to have to be repainted, when they had to go back to the welding lines to be fixed. The warehouse became a wreck, with containers backed up to the point that people did not even have room to work. I went from completing a large unit in 30 minutes, to it taking me 2.5 hours on the same one, not to mention all the repairs that needed to be done that were missed during production, when before I would have caught them, before the units even left the production line. Other petty things I did included not showing on Saturday to work, when the manager would catch me at the last second and tell me I had to. I took to cutting out the text in the employee handbook citing that working unscheduled hours required management to notify you 3 days in advance, and leaving a letter with that portion of the handbook on his desk the following Monday. There was nothing they could do, since I was following the handbook to the letter. At this point, it was a game of who would blink first. They could lay me off and I could draw unemployment on them, or I would quit. Next on the list was safety. They liked to hassle me so much about trivial things, that I figured they would appreciate me going through the plant, and documenting every single last OSHA violation, safety violation and anything else that was not right. I had a notebook that was filled with violations, from one end of the plant to another, things like, crane lifts that were being used improperly with J-hooks, that OSHA previously warned the company about, the same J-hooks they liked to hide every time OSHA came through the plant. Welders that had frayed cords around puddles of water, tools being left on top of units, that could fall off and hit someone, lack of ventilation, particle counts that were too high, forklifts that were not serviced enough. I tagged out equipment, that technically shouldn't be used in its current state, and locked out the forklifts, that needed brakes or any sort of maintenance. Eventually, the production manager took the bait, and untagged one of the forklifts I had locked out due to having bad brakes. Anybody who knows lockout procedure can understand what a massive fuck up that is. Once I compiled my list of improvements, I went to the government official who was overseeing safety procedure, since we often worked on government orders. I gave him my notebook, informed him of my manager taking the lockout off a defective forklift, then went on break and waited. About 30 minutes later, I saw my manager walking back from the head office and looking pissed beyond belief. Later I heard from someone who knows him, that he got punished severely, especially for the forklift. From then on, he avoided me and wouldn't even speak to me or look at me. After that, I continued to slow my work pace down, and got a bit of satisfaction each day from the complete shit show the place had become, and how backed up it was every single day. After I left the company, I heard they hired 5 guys to do my job, and that they still did a shit job at it. Had they treated me better instead of coming at me like they did, they would have been still getting the top quality of work from me, that they got when I first joined them, and things would have went along just fine. I can't even imagine how much money I must have cost that company by sticking to the exact letter of the rules. TLDR, the company wanted to make me miserable so that I would quit. I toughed it out and resorted to malicious compliance, and made them miserable by playing their own game better than them. If you liked these stories, hit that like button, and leave a comment below. You can upvote these stories by pressing the links in the description. If you want to hear more stories from me, hit the subscribe button, and press the bell icon to be alerted when a new video is posted.